The Nintendo DS is not only one of Nintendo's most popular systems that has ever come out, it is also, as of this day, the third best selling system of all time, recently just being overtaken by the Nintendo Switch. But at the time when it came out, though, in 2004, it filled a certain gap in gaming that I think is what helped it really blow up in sales. And that was just really catering to a casual market. The Wii hadn't quite come out yet, and also we didn't quite have smartphones at that time. And so because of that, I think that there was a big appeal in playing games that are just very much more casual, outside of like the Nintendo IPs, there was a lot of popular games on this, like Brain Age and those kind of games, right? So for people that just like to have something to play on a portable form factor, and also the touchscreen also benefited a lot, where it just made some of these games really simple in concept to play, that it just appealed to a wide audience. And so that's why the Nintendo, or part of the reason why I feel the Nintendo DS really blew up. I'm actually not too really familiar with the whole library of the system. I did get the original one when it first came out in 2004, and right around launch time, as I thought the concept was unique, but I kind of fell out of it pretty quickly, though, as there wasn't a whole lot onto it that really struck me as, a system that had a lot of games I wanted to play on it. What's interesting, though, is that this, and same thing with the Wii as well, is that in later years, I've actually been more curious to explore the overall library of it. And so there's a lot of games that I would want to try out on this system here. So that's kind of what this list here, it's a list of 10 games that I have some familiarity with, and games that I would really want to play at some point, or feel comfortable in recommending them to pretty much everyone, right? If you feel like you're able to get into this kind of gimmicky system, if you've never already, right? Which you might be kind of rare, right? Or not, because again, if you haven't played the system, it's that's kind of an anomaly for anybody that's a video game player, just because again, the system sold so much, right? And also seems like just pretty much everyone played this. But these are 10 games though here, so some of these will be more familiar games, right? Like games from the Nintendo lineup of games, but also some other games too, also that maybe you haven't really heard about. And so I try to pick games that I am personally games that I personally would like to try, but also games that to some extent, right, use the unique capabilities of the system as well too. But let me know what other games you were playing on the Nintendo DS, as again, this system is a bit of a blind spot for me, but now that I'm getting more interested in playing games on this system, I'd be curious to check out some other games other than the ones that I have listed here. First game I'm going to talk about on this list is for Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. So this has been an ongoing series for a while now, and I believe it originated here on the Nintendo DS. And I've already played a little bit of this game, but it's definitely something that I feel like I could really get into. I have a bit of a fascination with like court drama, so I feel like this one would be right up my alley, right? If I ever wanted to play a game that is, story based and all, but has some like a intriguing plot line, and just the overall courtroom drama and all is something that I feel like I could get into. And I feel like it works really well on, or these kind of games, I should say, feel like they work really well on the DS, just with the dual layers or the dual screen, that it could be like a fun way to show the graphics on there. And I feel like this one would fit the bill on that. So definitely a game in a series that I'd be really interested in getting into more. And next game here is for Elite Beat Agents. So this is like a rhythm-based, music-based game, and from what I played of this game, it's very silly, but the music is really catchy, and the gameplay is very fun. And again, it fits really well with the dual screen on this, where you're pressing the buttons there to try to time it right so that you can continue. I would assume, like getting higher score and all, if the better that you're, or how accurate you are on pressing the buttons there on the screen. But the art style and everything is really silly, but really well done for the Nintendo DS. And again, the music is really catchy and has some fun, like almost like comic book style animation and graphics in the background. That this game just looks like a big blast to play, and certainly something that I would be interested in continuing to play if I just want to play something that's fun and a little silly at times. Next up is Dragon Quest IX Sentinels of the Starry Skies. So I've been getting into the Dragon Quest series more and more, and there's still some though that I haven't quite beaten yet, this one included. But it's definitely one that, from what I've played, looks really interesting. And I was amazed that for this one here, that they decided to make this one exclusive to the Nintendo DS, as I felt like Dragon Quest VIII, so the one before this one, was on the PlayStation 2, which at the time was a more modern system, and looks like they were trying to go where the next installment would come out on whatever one of the major systems that was out at the time, which at this point was the seventh generation systems. But they stuck to the Nintendo DS, and I think a lot of that just had to do with how popular the system was, specifically in Japan. And ultimately, from what I've heard, it was a really good fit for the system here. And while the game was relevant, there was a multiplayer component to it, which I'm pretty sure that has been shut down now, at least officially. But it still seems like a fun game to play, though, single player. And from what I've seen, definitely carries a lot of the classic Dragon Quest tropes on it. And so, definitely a quest that I would be interested in continuing to play more, even if it's lacking the multiplayer option. Next up is for Trauma Center Under the Knife. I was a big fan of the Trauma Center Second Opinion on the Wii, and this one seems to be pretty much the same as, actually, I believe the Wii one is sort of a remake of this one. I'm not quite sure, but either way, though, they're really fun games to play, and I feel that they utilize the gimmicks of that these systems had. So again, on the Wii, and also now, and then this one on the DS, with the kind of game that it is, where here you're using the stylus to carefully select some of the your tools there that you have for surgery as you're either stitching patients up or pulling out glass shards and all. And because you sometimes have to be very precise and careful with your movements, it definitely gives you the feeling of what it, at least a small little glimpse of what it is to be a surgeon. And I think that was kind of the point of these games here, is that the style of gameplay that it had, using like the dual screen and the little stylus there, is to mimic actual hand gestures and all, that made it feel a little bit different than just using a generic controller. And that's where I feel some of these games excelled on the DS. And so definitely one that is one of my more favorites on this system here for that. Next up is for Metroid Prime Hunters. First off, excuse my gameplay. I'm not very good when I'm recording this, as I just have my phone on the stand as I'm pointing down at it on the Nintendo DS, and I'm trying to play, trying to look over my phone, right, so I can look down at the screen on this, so you might see the system move around a bit. But I definitely am curious to play this game more, and I know that this game was more popular when it came to its multiplayer options, but I've heard that the single player campaign is still pretty good, so I'd be curious to play that. The control scheme is interesting. It's you pan the camera around and all, looks like with the stylus, but sometimes it makes Samus jump. So it seems like it might take a little bit of getting used to. But the little bit that I played of this, though, definitely has some of that Metroid Prime gameplay that we all know and love. And so, just so that I get an overall more knowledge of the Metroid universe, I'd definitely be interested in playing through this one. And I was really impressed with the graphics as well, too, as for a Nintendo DS game, they certainly looked not too bad, and it ran pretty well as well. And next up is The World Ends With You. And this is definitely a unique game, one of the more unique games you can play, and also a game that really, I felt, that made good usage of the dual screen and the stylus as well too. It's different than, say, like a lot of action RPGs you can play out there, but the music is really catchy on it, and Tetsuya Nomura's artwork really shines through here. It is a bit talky though, and so that's one thing I remember that when I first played this game years ago, that it kind of turned me off a little bit. But it does have an interesting story to it, and ultimately, like I said, right, the uniqueness of it and all, and how you control your characters and all. Well, it does get some getting used to. If you can appreciate for what the Nintendo DS was trying to do with its stylus and dual screen, I think you can appreciate this game here. If you're also along for the ride, right, for it to tell you a kind of a convoluted but still engaging story. And for me, the artwork and all really sells it as well, of course, as the music too. And definitely one of the more unique experiences on the system. And next up is The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. So we couldn't really go through a Nintendo console list without including a Zelda game. And so the DS had two of them, this and also Spirit Tracks, and they're both set within the same art style and universe as the Wind Waker. But this one here, Ellie, and I'm pretty sure what it's all the Spirit Tracks. So the way you get around in the game is by moving Link around with the stylus, which can be a little tricky instead of just using like the directional pad. But it does get you do start getting used to it after a while, and it makes for some fun gameplay moments. As instead of just going up to something and pushing a button, you just tap on it with the stylus there. And so, some of the puzzle solving elements too also are pretty unique because of that. And while not necessarily one of my more favorite Zelda games, I still feel like they're unique experiences. And this is the one that I played a little bit more into, which is the one that's on my list. But I would say if you are into this game and can and don't mind the different control scheme, this one and Spirit Tracks would definitely be games that I would suggest getting on the Nintendo DS. And the next one on the list here is Mario Kart DS. So another staple on a Nintendo console where we can't go through a list right without having a Mario Kart game of some sort. And so this one is just more Mario Kart goodness. It has a similar look of like Mario Kart 64, only now the characters are actually polygonal, and it still has a lot of fun tracks, the same Mario Kart classic gameplay. And so, from what I can see, I mean, there's not a whole lot of new gameplay mechanics, but it's just Mario Kart, and with the dual screen, right? You get the actual racing action on one screen, and then the course map at the bottom screen, which is pretty cool and all. Again, not something that is truly revolutionary, but it's Mario Kart. It's fun, and definitely I would say a must play on the system. And the next one here is for Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. And honestly, this is probably my favorite Nintendo DS game. Although, admittedly, like I said before, I don't have the most experience with the system here, so I haven't really. I don't think I've ever beaten an actual Nintendo DS game. Maybe just from aside from Mario Kart, where I've gone through all the courses, but that's about it. But this one here, it's that I feel like it would be my favorite one. It's Castlevania, a Metroidvania, and I really enjoyed the first one, and this one seems to, continue on from what the Aria of Sorrow was doing on the Game Boy Advance, and so much about it that I love. I do prefer the character portraits and all from the Aria of Sorrow, which I believe were done by Ayami Kojima, but this is still pretty cool with its more anime aesthetics and really great level layouts, bosses, and just overall really enjoyed this game. And even though I haven't quite beaten it, I did get pretty far into it back in the day and enjoyed my time with it. Although I will say that the whole mechanic of sealing the bosses, right, with doing a certain, drawing a certain symbol on the screen with the stylus, can get a little tricky. But ultimately, it's still a really fun game, though. And this one, along with the two other Metroidvania games that came out, Portrait of Ruin and Order of Ecclesia, I think it's called, they're all really excellent. But this is the one that I remember from back in the day more and that stood out more. So, which is why it's on my list here. But what I have at my number one, maybe not necessarily my favorite game, but still the one that I feel is one of the more recognizable games on the system, is for New Super Mario Brothers. This was the first game that came out in this series of Mario games where there were 2D platformers, and although they're not very original per se, where I mean, outside of the 2.5D graphics, it's still classic Mario fun, and so you can't really go wrong with that, even though they're not amongst the best 2D Mario games. That still goes to Super Mario World, Super Mario Brothers 3, and even for me, Super Mario Brothers Wonder. But you can't deny, though, that these games are still a lot of fun, and you'll get a lot of great platforming goodness with it. And it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was like really revolutionary, but it's still pretty fun to have on the second bottom screen, right, where you can tap to utilize one of your power ups on it, and also can you see where you're at more or less on the stage there. And so, just a lot of fun, and also going big after Mario eats one of those mushrooms is a lot of fun too. Also, to just sort of barrel your way through a level there, and definitely a must play, I would say, on the system here. So that's what I got for games on the Nintendo DS. This is one that I would definitely like to hear what you were playing on it, and if you have any opinions on these games or other games too. As again, it's not a system that I'm very familiar with, so always curious to know to or to learn more about it. But that's all I got, and we'll see you on the next one.